This video is sponsored by Skillshare.
As a kid, Linkin Park was probably my favorite band, and I learned a lot from them about songwriting, structuring songs, and developing sound. I want to focus on the first two albums of the band in this video because those are my favorite albums. Not that I disrespect any of their later work, but Hybrid Theory and Meteora were just such a big part of my childhood that I feel like that's where I have the most compelling insights to offer. So let's go back to the year 2001 when this guy was 11 years old and had never heard heavy rock music before. What's up everyone, Friedemann Findeisen here from Holistic Songwriting. Welcome to the second season of the Artist Series where we talk about the biggest rock artists in the world and what we can learn from them. Today we're taking a close look at Linkin Park, which you've been requesting pretty much since the beginning of this series. It's difficult finding a formula for this band, seeing how much the band's sound has changed over the years. In that, they actually reminded me a lot of Coldplay, who also started out as a more personal rock band, then moved to global stadium rock, and eventually EDM pop. That's if you don't count 2014's The Hunting Party, which broke with the sound the band had established at this point. I'm mentioning this because the diversity in Linkin Park's music made it very difficult for me to find three good words to describe the band as a whole. As you know, I like to start my analyses by figuring out the image of the band and working backwards. So that's another reason why I wanted to stick to their first albums. Alright, your turn. Stop the video, find 3 or 4 words to describe the band, post them below, and come back to me. Ready? Here's mine. Polished or clinical, heavy, and man versus machine. I still remember hearing In the End as an 11-year-old on MTV, and the impact it had on me. All I had heard until then was Bryan Adams, the Beatles, and various boy groups. Linkin Park managed to introduce me to heavier rock music because it had emotions I knew, aggression and sadness, that it managed to present in a very appealing pop package. It was the first time I ever noticed the production of a song because it added something unique to the band. Mixing rock and rap had been done before, like in Walk This Way, for example. But what was truly new was the man versus machine aspect, where the performances and production merged together. Like in rapper Mike Shinoda's favorite anime film Ghost in the Shell, where a woman is essentially reborn into a robot, Linkin Park sounds like a human-machine hybrid. At least that's my hybrid theory. And while we're talking about Ghost in the Shell, it almost reads like a mission statement. Like that's where the man versus machine idea came from, why the cover for Reanimation looks like this, and why Breaking the Habit looks like that. In the music, you can hear this idea in the glitchy rap vocals and the carefully chosen delays and radio effects.
The day the clock takes life away, it's so unreal. Didn't look out below, watch the time go right out the window.
You can see this man versus machine motif here as well, with all the CGI, how these vines grow around Mike, like he's becoming an organic part of the special effects, and vice versa. In terms of harmony, the band has always been very straightforward. Diatonic power chords and triads are all over these songs, and one chord progression in particular stands out. 6-1-4-2, or if you want to look at that in minor, 1 flat 3 flat 6 4. Let's listen to a couple of the singles that use this chord progression. It doesn't stop there. If we pull back a little further, almost all of the singles from their first 3 albums start with a 6-1 or 1 flat 3, respectively.
I tried so hard and got so far. I given up.
After the 6-1, the band shifts to a 2, 4, or 5 and ends on a 2, 4, or 5. With 3 exceptions, this literally describes every single the band has put out until 2010. So this lays a very poppy foundation for these songs. And while Chester is mostly remembered for his powerful rock voice, his clean singing always had an R&B vibe to it, a very bright, poppy sound. And though we didn't know it at the time, we'd hear much more of this Chester in the future. Melodically, Chester sticks to typical rock colors. He feels right at home with the 1st and 5th scale degree. These, of course, make up the tonic power chord and thus merge well with the guitars. However, the way Chester presents these colors is in a form that we know from pop music. Essentially, all these melodies are built on and revolve around just one scale degree, what we call a one-note melody, or at least something closely related to that.
I've become so numb, I can't feel you there. Become so tired, so much more. I bleed it out, digging deeper just to throw it away. I bleed it out. Everything you say to me takes me one step closer to the edge, and I'm about to crawling in my skin. These wounds, they will not heal. I can't feel the way I did before. Don't turn your back on me. I won't be ignored.
For more on this subject, I highly recommend you check out my videos on Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran as well, where I explain the relevance of this technique in the industry today. But not everything about these melodies is diatonic. In some of his verses, we can also hear Chester's influences from grunge music.
For me, I think that, Nirvana really helped shape kind of how I viewed music. There's so many aspects of all of their albums that kind of have influenced me as a musician. So I would definitely put them in the top 10 artists that have inspired me to want to be in a band.
In the Nirvana episode, we talked about the ambiguity of power chords and how to use that creatively for your melodies. Chester uses this principle as well, for example here.
I cannot take this anymore. Saying everything I said before.
The riff here is clearly set in C# minor, but Chester sings in E#. So basically he sings Mixolydian flat 6 here. Although even that isn't so clear, in the second pre-chorus it might as well be Mixolydian. It's kind of hard to tell. Let's listen to another example.
It's easier to run, replacing this pain with something love. It's so
We're in E flat minor with Chester singing a G. But here, it's clearly just used as a color, and he switches back to a G flat soon after. Another thing that's always given Linkin Park that pop flavor is its structure. As you will know from my book The Addiction Formula, the hook and melody master files and the lyric writing master files, in commercial music, structure is everything. All of the songs strictly follow the Addiction Formula to a T. In fact, I literally used a bunch of these songs as examples in the book. And then there's a few things that are a little more unusual that Linkin Park does, like Crawling, which has no bridge, or when a song starts with a heavy riff, it's usually only played twice, not 4 times. And then there's one of my favorite writing techniques, mostly because it's difficult to do well: mashup choruses. This is when the last chorus of a song is combined with another section to create a larger-than-life effect. Check it out.
confusing what is real. It's like I'm paranoid looking over my back. It's like a whirlwind inside of my head. It's like I can't stop what I'm hearing within. It's like the bass inside is right. I'll become so numb, I can't feel you. Time to be what you want me to be.
So that's the kind of polished pop attitude Linkin Park brought to the table from the beginning. And by mixing that with heavier sounds, they introduced a lot of kids like me to metal. So how does the band sound heavy? There's a couple of things, starting with the tone of the guitar, the drop C# tuning, and one very important chord that pops up almost every time a heavy riff is needed. This chord is a power chord on the flat 2 of the key. Music theory tells us that it comes from Phrygian, a scale that is identical to the minor scale, with the exception of that minor second. But if you look a little closer, in Phrygian, technically, the 5th degree is a diminished chord. I think it's fair to say that in all rock music, if a power chord is played on the flat 2, the 5th degree is still played as just another power chord. In other words, in riffs like this, we're not actually hearing Phrygian, we're just hearing this one chord that's being borrowed from the scale. This modal interchange makes the chord even more dissonant and makes it the perfect candidate for almost all of Linkin Park's metal riffs.
Need you anymore. I don't want to be ignored. I don't need. Run away, gonna run away. Run away, gonna run away. No, try to take the best of me. Go away. No, try to take the
the things that really impressed me as a kid when I was going through the CD booklets, yes, that used to be a thing, was the obvious attention to detail. You could tell that this was a passion project. It wasn't just some company that shoved a lot of money down the throats of some young musicians. No, the artwork was done by the rapper guy and the DJ made the music videos and they co-produced everything. That was cool to see and immediately made them my idols. And as a big advocate of DIY musicianship, that still gets me excited. Everyone in the band was pulling in the same direction, turning their premiere album into the most-selling record on the entire planet that year. It went on to sell over 30 million copies worldwide, which makes it the best-selling debut album of the 21st century. But of course, we know that the story doesn't end well, and that last year, at 41, Chester hanged himself, leaving behind a wife and 6 children, and of course a band and millions of fans. The band's new logo reflects this recent change, removing one of the 6 lines in the logo. It's always sad when someone decides to take their own life, but it's made worse by the fact that, like me 18 years ago, a lot of teenagers idolize this man and may suddenly see suicide as a viable option to escape the, without a doubt, most confusing and fear-inducing time of their life. If you're a teenager who's fed up with the world, who's thinking about ending things, take it from someone who's been through that, who was bullied hard in school, who thought that something was seriously wrong with them, who couldn't find a girlfriend and didn't have a lot of friends, who thought about suicide often, but chose patience instead, and who today lives a beautiful, happy life, working the job of his dreams. It took me 12 more years to meet Joanna Kjolbassa, since last week Joanna Findeisen. And I know the future isn't going to be smooth sailing from here on out. But I know that with the patience and strength and resilience I developed as a teenager, I can get through anything. And I believe in myself. And I do believe that you can do the same. Stay gefährlich, everyone.
Before I let you go, a word about our sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes in music, arts, design, business, and more. If you're one of the first 500, the link in the description will give you access to 2 free months of premium account goodness. That means all the courses about all the subjects for free. And there is a ton of stuff. So this month, I just want to share 3 videos on my personal watch list to give you some ideas on how to use this platform. Interior design, to improve the look of my room for future YouTube videos. Customizing type, for YouTube thumbnails and posts on Facebook. Illustrator Masterclass, to be able to create my own flat designs to spruce up my courses and videos. As you can see, if you know what you want, you'll find it on Skillshare. Again, check the link in the description to get 2 months free. Thanks for watching. Take care.